Welcome to Fantasy Take TV. We formerly Supercoach Take, but now we are Fantasy Take TV. Really exciting, lots of stuff in the preseason, and this is our first podcast. So joining me is Enno. How are you, mate?
George, good to see your face, mate. How you been the off season?
Good. Been playing League of Legends mostly, on holidays at the moment, but dreaming about Supercoach as well. So really the standard stuff for a 27-year-old male, but nonetheless, yeah, I've got a bit of time off, so enjoying that. JD, how are you?
How embarrassing. Who would play weeb games in their free time? Definitely not me. I'm pretty good, thanks. Yeah, last day of work tomorrow, which is good for the year, and then looking forward to spending some more time with the family. So, yeah, all going well, thanks.
Great. Now, we got a lot to discuss today. Supercoach Picker just came out, and people posting their teams, seeing a few trends and stuff. So I think the first thing we'll speak about is what sort of popular players we're looking at or we're noticing. What players that we thought might be in more teams that we've noticed. So Enno, what have you noticed about looking at people's teams starting out?
For me, it's probably the defense. It's probably biased that they're both in my team, but it's probably Lloyd, Jake Lloyd, and Aaron Hall as the D1 and D2. We're just so reliable. Lloyd for obviously a longer period of time. 5 years of just defender top 3 status. He hasn't pretty much fallen off at all. He had that 1 year a couple of years ago where he was unreachable when I didn't have him in 2020, and he was just doing your head in every week. And yeah, he's for what he can do, he's still really underpriced. That season, I think he can get back to he was 107 average the last couple of years. I think he still can get above that again. But yeah, for me, it's Jake Lloyd, and then Aaron Hall is the other one with pretty much probably more upside than he does. Just that, yeah, he's 31 now, getting on, and has sort of had a lot of injury history. But they're the two I'm seeing at D1 and D2 a lot. Maybe that's biased. Maybe that's because we all look at the same teams in the Discord. But for me, that's probably the main two that have stood out. There's obviously others on other lines, but yeah, for me, it's probably those two. What about you, JD?
Yeah, I think like those two are probably the two I've seen the most as well. Especially like Aaron Hall. I'd say he's probably been the most picked defender that I've seen, which is a little bit surprising. Maybe compared to some of the others, like someone like Lloyd you mentioned has a history, and then there are also some like other like more value options that I kind of expected to see a little bit more of, but haven't necessarily as much. So Whitfield and Sicily are the two that sit in this category. They're definitely still very heavily picked. Like I've seen a lot of Whitfield, but maybe not as much Sicily as what I expected. What about yourself, George? Is there anyone we kind of haven't touched on that caught your eye?
I think just about every defense is Lloyd, Hall, Whitfield at the moment. It's a tough one because we got to put priority on picking the 650k mids, but I'm seeing Zach Butters in every team, which is surprising because I wasn't sure about it, and I was like, yeah, I'll fit him in full-time mid apparently, like said that like a week ago or something like that. So I'm seeing Butters in every team in the Discord, Dunkley's in every team. Not seeing a whole lot of Duncan, which is good, I think. I don't love him as a starting pick. And yeah, in the midfield seems pretty standard, so I think, yeah, definitely the most surprising one is Zach Butters. So I assume you. Do we think that he'll play that midfield role and be a great pick for us? What do you guys think?
I think the main thing with Butters is the value of it being, what is he, 440k? Like, you got Taranto at 530, Duncan 540. Butters just almost 100k cheaper than those guys, seems just way more value. So when they're filling out, like you said, the big mids, 650k and up, he just gives you a bit of cash saving down there in the forward line. So I think that's the main thing with Butters. What do you think, JD?
Yeah, I think that's right. He's one of those ones where his upside's so great. If he does get that role, you kind of have to pencil him in for now and wait to see if that gets proven wrong in the preseason. Maybe his body doesn't hold up. Maybe he doesn't get as much mid time as what we thought, and we take him out before round 1. But he's just one of those ones where if everything goes right, you have to start him. Otherwise, you're going to be behind the 8 ball. I would say like Taranto is probably the only other one in the forward line I'm seeing a fair bit of. Like Dunkley, Butters, and Cogs are probably like the main 3, and then it's like some teams have Taranto, some don't, and that seems to be the only other forward really being considered. But George, as you touched on, like the midfields seem to be the place where people are investing a lot and like in the big names. So who've kind of stuck out to you?
Definitely Finn McRae when talking big names.
Big names, yeah, big names. Yeah, well, half of his name is big.
Well, anyway, the
Not
midfield is
because of him.
quite. Well, it's a tough one because, as you said in your YouTube video, JD, it's who are you not picking in the midfield, and that's where the headaches come in. And it's like, if you're not picking, for example, Clayton Oliver, you're probably not picking him for a very long time because, we might have some great scorers. I assume everyone's picking Dacos at this stage. Plus, there's a few good rookies, mature age rookies, a few second-year rookies as well, that seem like they could be good fieldable options. So, how many can we afford to fit into the midfield? So, yeah, and assume a lot of us, Neil was basically in every team as well. So you have your Neil, and then which four do you pick after that? And maybe you want to just pick the three mids. But, yeah, it seems, McRae, Oliver, Took, Titch, and Steele, and a bit of Walsh as well. So, yeah, it's hard to try and figure out which ones you don't pick at this stage. So, yeah, I'm thinking one of Took or Oliver, but it's a really tough one. But, yeah, I think people are spending up in the midfield. So you guys reckon you guys will run with, say, 4 of these 600-plus midfielders? Anna?
You saw the tweet today I put up because obviously that's all the discussion points with the mids. Like you said, who you're leaving out. And I put up a thing, which 5 is everyone picking? And most people did respond, pretty much everyone of, their own 5 or whatever. But someone did respond that they were going to go, it's actually harder because I have to leave 2 or 3 out because I'm going to 4 primo mid with Neil at M4. He said, I forget who it was, but that's an interesting thing because that I think means he has an extra defender and he can obviously spend, get some rookies off the field, maybe in the forward line, cogs at like maybe F5, but I think still F4. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, is that a viable option? Obviously, we need enough mid rookies to get one more on the field, but going 4 big guns, do you feel like you're missing out on all the points if you leave more of these guys out? What do you think with that, JD?
Yeah, I don't know. This is a really tough choice. I was just mulling over, I guess, what you've both said, and whether you go 4 or 5. If you don't start one of them, are you ever getting them in? And I'm just trying to figure out why is this such a big problem this year compared to years in the past? And I think it's because we've never had this 120. Well, it's not just they've averaged 120, but they're mostly all durable and they're all like fairly proven. Usually you get in a year, you get someone that kind of pops up out of nowhere. They're a 1-year wonder and then they kind of disappear again. And then you only have a few that are mainstays, but it just seems like this year when looking at the list of the top 8 mids, it's so hard to pick who's going to fall out of there. And anytime you have this history and they're going to be in the top 8, it's really hard not to pick them because that's what you're looking for, right? Who can we start that we know is going to be top of their line? And in the midfield, it just seems so obvious. But the only other hard part is there does seem to be lots of values with potential mid prices this year. And so, by locking in those premiums, I guess that's the thing you're trading off against. It usually has the better rookies and potentially some of the better mid prices. So yeah, I don't know. This is I think is going to dictate a lot of teams over the course of preseason. Not just how many mids do you start, but which ones. The combo of those two are really tricky this year, I think.
I think it'll be fun that if we get no defender, no forward rookies, and we're all scrambling, we have to cut one or two of these mids. I think that would be really fun. But nonetheless, that's something for as we track how the rookies go and get closer to open. That's something we'll look at then. So I think we can move to the next topic. So to speak about structure real quick. So in the past, I think I've probably gone. I reckon last year I went 12 keepers plus Thomas Phillips. That did not work. So that's what happens when you try, because part of the point was I was a little bit unsure of some rookies, so you tried to squeeze, downgrade some other primos, get them, and then fit in that 13th primo. So do you go 12, something like 12 keepers? This is just from experience how you guys have found your starting structure. Would you go something like 12 keepers? Pay a bit up for rookies everywhere, a few 200k rookies, we already said in the midfield, Horn Francis, McRae, Dacos, Charlie Curnow, Hamling in defence, probably not a great option, but backup option if required. Or would you go, say, you start downgrading, say a Lloyd to a Ridley, which is what I've done to fit Isaac Heaney and stuff like that. So what do you guys think? Do you guys want to secure all these top dogs? Start with you, JD, or would you rather, spread your money out a little bit? Happy to look for value, or just, would you rather just secure the top players now?
Yeah, I mean, a phrase that we'll say a lot over the preseason is rookies dictate structure, right? So if the most expensive rookies are the ones that are going to have the scoring and the job security and we have to pay up, then we have to pay up. You kind of feel like your hands are tied. I think where the interesting decision comes in is kind of like some of the players you mentioned that are the mid prices, or maybe they're like second year rookies that are the low 200-ish as well. Like your Constables, your McRae's. I'm sure there's other like obvious ones I'm missing. But like whether or not you're trying to fit those in plus the top rookies, or like can you substitute them for one another? So, in general, it's kind of interesting, right? Because 3 years ago you would just go the super guns and rookies, and you'd avoid the top priced rooks. But I think the last couple of years we've seen that shift the other way. We're paying up for those good rookies like your Rows and your Walshes has actually been overall like the right move to do. So I don't know. Like I guess without any other knowledge, I'd say we're probably going to have to pay up again this year. That would be my best guess.
What's interesting, before I get to your thoughts, Enno, is that quite a few, like the game has changed, so it's like you need to secure these top players at the start of the season. Because I think 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even more, people were winning with 14 primos. One year was even 15 primos that people started. But the game's changed, so it's quite difficult. And when we go thin, 12 or 13 premiums, it's very hard to get the perfect team. I barely saw a single perfect team at the end of last year. A lot of injuries in the back end would have affected that, but it just makes the game a lot harder. And when you go that 13th primo, you have one less upgrade to do, and overall that means less trades. So it's something that I would like to do, try and fit in that 13th primo. But what are you thinking about your structure? I think from looking
just before that, sorry, like for anyone asking why it's become so much harder, like why you can't start 15 primos, it's because scoring's gone up, right? Like 5 years ago, if you had 105 mid, like that was easily a premium. Now it seems like if you don't have a 115, you're off the mark. Rucks are scoring about 30 points more at the top level than what they did 5 years ago, and like the salary cap hasn't changed, so you basically just have to pay more to get good players. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's a big change. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. So I know your structure. I digress.
No, you guys have all said it pretty well. The only thing I can notice from this year is that obviously Gawndy, we've been paying a 1.45 mil in the rucks for a long time. Now I know all of us, I think, have Darcy and JD's going to mess with the Bruce and the old cheap R2s. Oh no, I think he's at R3. Anyway, regardless, that's like what 1.3 now, less than. So for the cash we save there, yes, it's probably going into these 80k mids, but maybe we have a bit more to spread around. But still, looking at my team, I have, I think, 13 primos now. That's got cogs as well as that. So, and I only have, so I got that.
Don't
so I got 13, right?
Now.
Yeah, no, I mean like 13 plus cogs plus day cost, but then the rest are all sort of base rookies.
Yeah.
So it's not like, if they don't come up, then I'm going to have to, get rid of a primo somewhere. And I would say that probably would be like a Tirano or something. But anyway, that's for another day. But yeah, maybe we have more to spend just because the rucks aren't 200,000 more than they used to be.
Yeah. So obviously rookies will take that. But for me, it's just, I'll fit the 13 in, see how rookies go. Cut one player, split them up into 200k rookies everywhere. That's kind of the plan. But look, a lot can change. So we'll move on. Now, mid prices that are taking our fancy.
These will help, won't they?
Yes.
These will help if they come up.
There's a few interesting ones. I'll start. One mid pricer I really like is Pat Lipinski. So Bulldogs mid DNA, we know how that is. Bulldogs mids are best. In case you haven't realised, it's been a few years, but Bulldogs mids are best. It's just how it is. So Pat Lip averaged 80, right? With 40% CBAs 2 years ago. New club, extra 2 years in development. So I'm not actually sure how much better he's gotten because he hasn't really made the team in his proper position or the team at all. But with a full-time inside mid-role, put up massive VFL numbers, but it's VFL, so it's whatever. So he's one I'm keeping an eye on. The only problem is he's 350k, and there's another 15 midfielders I want to pick. So I like Pat Lipinski. I'll pick him in other formats, but Supercoach, it'll be hard to fit him in. But if I can somehow do it, he's a hard watch for me in the preseason. I think he can average 100. So I'm a big fan of Pat Lip. So JD, who is your mid-pricer taking your fancy?
Oh, wow. So we're just this really is fantasy now, right? If McRae's going 100 in his second year, oh, come on. No wonder we're not super coaches anymore.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts on the Pat Lipinski pick?
No, I think he's I don't know. I think Lipinski's interesting. He's definitely on the watch list. There's nothing wrong with him. I mean, it's like with a lot of the mid prices, right? At this time of the year, it's the funnest time of the year because there's so much optimism. We see all the things that could go right, and then in a couple of months' time, we'll kind of get based in reality. So, I mean, I guess like my equivalent in the midfield is Rao, who's priced similarly. I'm a huge fan of him. I think he's really underpriced on the back of coming back underdone last year, and he's just a player that has that talent to go super premium in the future. So I don't know. This could be a bounce back year if I was going to pick a similar, like equivalent mid-pricer in the midfield.
Matt Rao, interesting.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people have faded him. Yeah, I watched him last year, but he was underdone coming back from, two big injuries. The second one being, actually both of them being unlucky. So yeah, I don't know. I think full preseason, obviously got game time in last year. So he's one that I think could bounce back in a big way.
Hope so. He was great to watch at his peak. But what you got?
One I've written down that interests me a little bit is Jade Gresham. Obviously, what did he play? 10 games last year or something, if that. But he's $299k. It seems really cheap for a guy that I know he's never been an absolute primo. I think he's mid-80s or whatever average. But if he gets any more mid-time, Jack Steele is one man that needs some help in there. I don't know how his fitness level is going, so it's been a while. So he's one that could maybe go Taranto down, and like we were saying, that's where my money could come to spread around a bit. Who knows? But yeah, he interests me a little bit, just a little bit.
I have bad news for you. He's
no good
with the forwards group at the moment.
Where'd you get that, Big Footy?
You got to check Big Footy preseason threads.
Yeah.
But I think they want him as a midfielder. I think he'll be used there eventually.
Probably has to work back towards it. Yeah.
It might be one where he shifts at some point during the year. But look, he's still, just because he's with the forwards group now, doesn't mean he'll stay there. They want him as a midfielder. So see how we go.
I feel like they need him as a midfielder. He got pace,
Yeah, well, they played him there before he got injured. So
dynamic. I think they need him. But yeah.
Yeah. Lots of great mid-price options.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was also some obvious ones that we won't go into deep, right? Because like everyone's covered them, but like Bruce, Cogs, there's some really obvious ones.
First, George. He said Bruce first.
Well, I've been saying Bruce just because it's a very popular option. Like Cogs is probably like the biggest no-brainer, and then Bruce is the second like really popular one. But I shouldn't have brought up Bruce in front of George. I mean, I know it's one way to set him off.
I made the comparison. I said that he's like Zion Williamson. He's carrying too much weight, and he keeps doing foot injuries.
Dude, Zion, it could be one of the saddest stories ever, but that's another topic. Yeah. Cogs is obviously the most obvious of all time.
We'll speak about the Rucks soon, so we'll speak about Bruce shortly. Yep. So you're going to have to get your used car salesman persona out, JD, and suck me in. So, we'll move on. So another interesting topic is, so this year, I'm looking at my team, my risk profile of my team, and I'm like, why do I have so many injury, say durability, players that have poor injury history? Well, they could be a bit better. Not the worst, but could be better. So why am I picking, players such as, Hull, Neil's in this bracket, I think, Sean Darcy, probably Dunkley as well, but as players like this, are we willing to take all these durability risks for their upside? We'll start with you, JD. So I know a lot of us had, like, I have bloody Heaney. I mentioned the word Heaney before. No one batted an eyelid. I'm the only idiot with Heaney at the moment.
We know your abusive relationship with Heaney. You talking about him every year. It's a guarantee. It just depends whether it's a start, middle, or end.
Either way, it ends the same in teams. But yeah, back to the point. Are we happy to take all these durability risks because of their upside? So Aaron Hall, look, and a lot of them, they play most games, but he had the slight groin injury. Butters has had a few injuries. Dunkley's had his injuries. We know about that. Start with you. Are you happy to take players like this because of their upside, or do you feel like you should cut back on some of them?
I feel like I'm going to step on JD's toes here, but Whitfield is like the most obvious one for there, really. Like, he's only 500k. Yes, he has a lot of just issues with playing a full season. Like, we read through the games here, it's like, let's go 19, 15. There was 1 year, 22, but he only averaged 99. Last few years, 16, 17, he did get through all of 2020, but then again, this year was 15, had some issues. But the upside is just too good not to take. So for him, he's like a risk I'm willing to take. Others I'm looking in my team, I don't really have too many. Probably Sean Darcy, I know we're speaking about Rucks in a bit, would be the one there, especially the price you're paying for him. 630k for a Ruckman is a bit, especially for a guy that's only done it for 1 year. But I think that's also one I'm willing to take in the Rucks. I think the upside's way too big. You average 118. He missed one game, round one, and then played every for the rest of the season. Yes, half of them were injured, but he still averaged 120 doing that pretty much. Like, imagine if he does get a good run at it, stays injury-free for the most part. He's probably always going to cop something here and there, being a big guy, but he's also one I'm willing to take. So that'd be the two I'm willing to take. I'm not sure about what you guys have in your team or who you got your eye on.
Well, this is just quickly. A few years ago, this is before I had a YouTube channel, I was hell-bent on not picking Taylor Adams in defence because he had so many soft tissue injuries. By the way, he played 22 games. Yes, he ended up D1. And ever since that, I was like, okay, maybe I learned my lesson. Like, maybe sometimes you do take durability risks. And then I took it the next year and my whole bloody team got injured. So it's a hard one. But the worrying thing is, if you don't have some of these players, you don't have Dunkley and he goes 130 again. You don't have Darcy and he goes 130 again like he did after the bye. Like, you just sit there and like, well, now it's just up to chance now whether they repeat their injuries or not. But I'm losing points, so it's just a really hard one, and I think I'm going to take the upside risks this year. A lot of it is alternatives as well. Like, if I'm not picking Darcy, who am I picking? Gawn, who seems overpriced because of Jackson. It's a tough one. JD, are you what's the overall risk profile of your team, and are you happy with it?
Yeah. So I guess when thinking about this, not all injuries are born equal. So the things I tend to consider is what is the injury history, right? So someone like a Whitfield who has been quite injury prone, he has injuries that are less likely to repeat. So more contact ones, less soft tissue ones, right? So it's the first thing way up is what type of injury history they had. That kind of helps you understand is it worth taking a gamble on them coming back from it. I think the second thing that we tend to consider is cost. So how big of a discount are you getting for that risk? And then kind of intertwined with that is how big the upside is. So you talk about Dunkley, whose injuries are shoulder recos, which look, they can reoccur, and it has for him, but we're getting him cheaper, and his upside is to be the top scoring Supercoach player next year, right? The top scoring player. So you look at these things, and for all those reasons, you go this is a really good mid-pricer. I think the other things we tend to consider, or we have a little bit of a luxury this year, is there a good sideways choice? So an example of this last year was if you started Zeeble, Danaher, and Impey, right? Even though if you started one of them right and they all have injury history, you kind of weren't worried too much if an injury occurred because you had two really good sideways options that you might not have started. And I think this year it's going to be the same boat where we've got some of these players maybe you start someone in the midfield that has a little bit of injury history, but a Rao or something. And then if he does get injured, I could sideways him out to Lipinski. So having picking mid prices, and not only do you think tick the above boxes, but then also have that sideways option, that brings the last little bit of security. And then I think the other thing is people tend to use the same evaluation criteria for mid, forward, and defense as they do for ruck, and I think that's wrong because In ruck, you tend to have a R3 that isn't playing, or like has poor job security. And I think like that's a weird place to take the mid-price risk. They do usually have a lot of good upside, but when you don't have backup and missing a game could equal a 0, like I think that's a harder place to kind of take these risks.
Definitely. That's a good transition into when we speak about the rucks. But with the durability risks, it's the upside with a lot of these plays. It's just far too high. And as you said, we have some options to sideways too, depending on which player and what line and whatnot. So we'll move on to the rucks. So this year might be different. I'm thinking. So the most popular thing I'm seeing is Grundy, Darcy. It's what I'm running with, and it's probably not going to change for the time being, or probably at all, to be honest, unless some sort of injury happens. Be interesting if Darcy has something happen to him in the preseason. What I will say is, I know JD, you were running Prusa R3, just experimental at this point.
Yeah.
COVID outs could be a problem, and if your R3 is playing, well, I don't know. God, hopefully they don't get COVID, but it's going to happen. Players are going to get COVID. Your R2 gets COVID. What do? Do you just cop the donut for 1 or 2 weeks, or you ever playing R3? And there's the pick paying off right there. So anyway, that's just one thing that we can expect to happen. But JD, what are you thinking in the rocks?
Yeah, so I think Grundy and Darcy definitely on board with that at the moment. Darcy just has that upside, and Grundy, I think, is like a little bit of fallen primo at his price at the moment. Gawn, I'm avoiding for the same reasons probably that you two are, which is that he's getting on in age, and you've got Luke Jackson, who seems to be taking more and more of that ruck time, which is going to eat into his scoring. I think like the only other big name option that isn't like going straight into the mid prices and rookies is Oscar McInerney. Yeah, that's how you say it, right? McInerney.
The big O.
The big O, yeah. That's why everyone says the big O. Oh, sorry, I'm missing one other actually, which is Rowan Marshall. I think they're the only other two that people are considering. Marshall, I think, is hard because he's like somewhat similar injury history to Darcy, but doesn't seem like he's got the same upside. He does have a nice buy though. And then the big O is like one that feels like it's being slept on a little bit. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the premiums before we kind of move into some of those other options, George?
Well, Big O went 120 in his last 5 and 110 in his last 10. So had a bit of a slow
priced
start.
At 94. Yeah, he's priced at 94.
So I think he had a slight ankle. He rolled his ankle, so he missed a game earlier. So I don't know if that affected him. But he looked really good in the finals. I think he had a huge amount of hitouts in the final against the Dogs, and the Dogs sharked them all. Like 40 hitouts for 80 points or something like that. But other than that, he's been playing pretty well. He's good around the ground. It's important. Tap work's pretty good. And Zorko was pumping him up in the preseason. So we like that when we see those sort of articles. I got to stop believing everything I read, because every time I read an article, then my team changes. So got to be.
I think Zorko said he was like training to be the best ruck in the league. And so anytime it's like someone's got a big goal like that, that's pretty cool.
Well, I think he feels like he played like one of the best rucks in the league for a while there. So now he knows kind of how to do it. So I don't mind the McInerney pick, but is he going to outscore Grundy or Darcy? I don't think he outscores Darcy. Grundy. There's an article with Grundy the other day as well, saying he wants to get back to his best, but it's pre-season. Everyone's training the house down and whatnot. But I think Enno, what are your thoughts on the you Grundy Darcy man? What do you think?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to add anything on to what you guys have already said about that. That's my current setup. One thing I will say and ponder to you boys: would you be surprised if Max Gawn ended up ruck 1 again next year? Like, would it actually surprise you, or would you just be like, "Oh, damn, we probably should have seen that coming since he's been the best ruck for the last 6 years"? Yeah, what do you think?
I think in terms of total points, possibly. I think he's capable of outscoring Grundy. Remember, a lot of Gawn's points, his average, like the last game he scored 150. He kicked a goal after the siren, got like 30 points for it. So a lot of his points were early on when he was rucking a bit more, getting more time than Jackson was eating up less time, basically. So it feels like that's his ceiling. Gawn is 30 years old, but he started his career a little bit later. And, we're seeing Goldstein. Goldstein played pretty good. I think he went 100, 110 plus after the bye or something last year. And he's like 34, 35, something like that. So I don't think Gawn tails off. It's just I think he continues his form, whatever he went, like 110, 115, something like that after the bye.
Yeah.
So it just feels like the upside isn't there, but I still trust him to be to score well. It's just I prefer Grundy and Darcy.
You think the others overtake him? Yeah.
Yeah.
The scoring power
JD?
of Darcy is just ridiculous. So it's hard to pass him up. But
Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised, but it's not who I predict. Like I predict him to be around the 3 to 5 range where he averages maybe like 110 to 115. And so like, maybe Darcy and Grundy only go about 115 and there's about 5 of them that all end up the same. But I guess with Gawn, he is the top price ruck at 657,000. So, given that I have him finishing third, and I think there's others that have more upside for cheaper, he just seems like the obvious one to leave out for now. But I wouldn't be surprised.
Cheapest we've had him for 4 years, probably. So, yeah, just a thing. It wouldn't surprise me, I think, if I was to answer that question. But yeah.
So George, I was going to ask George. Yeah, you go.
I was going to interrupt. One thing I want to note is something I'm a bit more on top of this year is players that are moving to new clubs or they have new coaches. So Grundy was used a lot around the ground, playing as that midfielder, like they're basically a midfielder for Collingwood. But Collingwood played high possession footy. Like remember that final against the Tigers where they like just possessed the ball like the whole game. So they would use Grundy a lot. Sorry to bring that up, but I wonder if they still have that game style with a new coach. Probably not. So I wonder if that affects Grundy at all. You know what I mean? Because all I remember is like possessing the ball a lot in the back half, especially. So just see if Grundy's used in that capacity. Maybe he's used more forward and they use Cameron a bit more, because Cameron's basically a mainstay now. I think he played 18 games last year, but they used him mostly forward. So I wonder if there is some sort of balance there, but nonetheless, it's still Grundy. So just something I wanted to add on. But JD, you had something to say.
No, that's a good call out. A good. Wonder which one. No, I was going to ask you, George, flat out. What do you think of all these people studying Bruce and Lynch? Is it? What's your advice to them?
Have they not learned anything? Well, for us, okay. Let me ask you 2 questions. Is Bruce the number 1 ruck at GWS?
Yes.
Are you sure?
No.
Is Bruce going to stay on the park?
No.
Is Bruce the king of Bankstown McDonald's? Most likely. Seriously. Okay, well, forget the third question, but the first 2. How can you... Anyway, how can you possibly pick this dude when you don't know if he's number 1 ruck and you don't know if he's going to stay on the park because he has not stayed on the park for 2 years? Trust this from an A-Smith owner from a few years back. I had to deal with Pitt and Net, and the best thing about it was...
bailout clause with that guy.
And I got bailed out. And then finally, the week before, what happens? Pitt and A goes 30, Gawn 180, and my season goes
I think
out
that's
there.
my favourite week of the last 5 years.
Oh my god, it's like just one more week. But if you pick, quality rucks that will score and are, job security for Christ's sake, you won't have this issue. And with Darcy is an issue, no doubt about it. But if he gets injured, trade him to Gawn or whatever. It's not like, oh shit, who are my options now? You have every option pretty much. I think Gawn's a little bit more expensive to start with, I think. I'm not sure, but, by round 4 or 5, I fully expect. And remember, Darcy went back-to-back 190s as well, so it's pretty freaky. But yeah, back to Bruce. I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. At R3, if he plays round 1, I kind of understand, especially if you're running Darcy. I'll give you that, but I don't really see him. It's hard to see him. Yeah, both of the question marks are job security and atrocious durability. It's not like, Heaney, for example. I know Heaney's durability is not great, obviously, but you look at his history. He's played 20 games most years, whereas Bruce is, I don't know. Anyway, that's my thoughts on Bruce. I think it's, I don't understand. But Max Lynch is another one, but he's behind Reeves. Do they play both? I don't know. So it's very much like the guy who won 2019. No, the guy who won 2020 started off with Meek, Hunter, and Flynn. Season was over within 4 weeks. When I think Hunter and Meek got dropped rounds 4 and 5. So why bother in this? Like if things go wrong, they go really, really wrong, really badly wrong. So that's all I have to say about that. But I think it's worth keeping tabs on Max Lynch and then Bruce. Well, I don't know.
I guess no. I think it's been a while since we've messed around in the rucks that we just probably, I don't know, aren't used to it. Like, I'm trying to think the last year before the Gaundi Supreme, like, what was it? Like, wasn't Nank like an R2? Cheap
Goldie, I
R2 one
think.
year?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
it's just been so long that we might forget, like, it can work. Like, just forget that, it is a possibility, but yeah.
There's 2 rookies we've forgotten about. Charlie Combin, who's probably not going to score much. Now is competition with CCJ. And if probably start him at F8 if we have no other options, but he's low priority rookie. And then Sam Hayes, if he can take Lyset's spot. So we hear all these great things about Sam Hayes. Port refused to trade him to Sydney for Aaliyah last year. And then they ended up trading Laddams to them instead. So they clearly rate Hayes quite highly. I think he
They
second
signed
most
him on
hitouts.
as well.
Yeah, so second most hitouts in the SANFL, behind the Crows backup Ruckman, who did a fantastic job and I actually think could threaten Rob's spot.
Really?
But yes, I think he's actually really good. He's far too good for SANFL anyway. But Rob's probably better, but nonetheless. Maybe if Sam Hayes we get, I think if Sam Hayes plays, I'll just play him at R3. I'm not even going to field him because I don't want to have, because Hayes is going to have that competition from Lyset most likely. So hypothetical, Sam Hayes plays round 1. Would you dream of him starting at R2? No.
Hell no. To quote you, that'd just be perfect R3, playing R3, especially since I'll be most likely starting Darcy. That's perfect for me. I think it'd be more if they played 2 ruckman, right? Because they had Laddams, Lyset, so maybe he's like the Laddams replacement. But that's an R3 for me. But that probably opens up JD starting Bruce at R2 instead with the Hayes backup, doesn't it?
I don't think so, because if you've got Darcy, Bruce, and then Hayes, it still feels too risky overall for me, just because like the likelihood, as George kind of mentioned, like one gets dropped and the other gets injured, and then you still got a 0, and you so I think like in general, I really rate starting a playing R3. Like kind of everyone that's played Supercoach with me for a year or 2 knows this. Like I'll fight donuts to the death. I don't think Loophole's a good starting option. So if Bruce is the only one that is named round 1, I will chuck him in at R3. If Hayes is playing round 1, I'll chuck him in at R3. I wouldn't dream of doing Bruce and Hayes for the reasons kind of George has spoken about already. But I do think like this ties a few of the themes we've been talking about together, right? Like overall risk profile of your team. I think if you got a ruck that hasn't got a history of durability like Darcy, we really should be trying to find a R3 that will play games, just because you need that cover. And it's also the position that tends to give us the most cash. That's been the case the last couple of years. You've had kind of like one top mid, and then the ruck has like given you lots of cash. So yeah, like I'm definitely going to invest in Bruce for R3 if we don't get a playing rookie. And I think that's where he should go. I'm not a really big fan of Bruce R2 and then like Lynch or Mays R3. But you never know. Like they could have locked down those ruck rolls by round 1, or their competition might get injured, and then like this conversation changes a little bit.
Yep. So before we sign off, just get your thoughts on who will be the most selected player when Supercoach officially opens. It's open now, but when we get ownership.
When you get that, yeah.
So my highest owned player, my rookie, will be...
Yeah, surprise, surprise.
Dacos.
Oh, okay.
Could be someone else. And my premium, I think it will be Lockie Neal.
Okay. I think for me, the rookie would be Elijah Hollins because of the price and the forward eligibility. But that's what I thought you were going to say. Primo's harder. Neal's a good one. You can't really say someone too expensive like a McRae or something. I mean, Cogs could be up there too. If Cogs is fit and he's playing round one, he'll be up there as well. So yeah, I'll go with that. JD.
Yeah, I would have said Cogs is going to be the most owned. Otherwise, I think I'll go Dunkley. I have maybe seen like one team total without him so far. So yeah, that'll be my most owned primo. For the Rooks, I don't know. I think you've probably covered off the two most obvious ones so far. So let's say you said Dacos, right, George?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, Dacos and
historically,
Holland's
been
1 and 2.
The number one pick has always been
Holland
Paul
Francis.
Nye, so-
I
Yeah,
guess so.
just because people know the name, but I think he's already one that people have like been warned off a little bit.
Mate, Dusty's
Roll
always
doesn't
high
sound
owned
great.
by the old, like everyone. Just Duster Martin, yeah.
I
Click
think-
on him. Paddy
yeah.
Cripps, yeah. Click on him. Danger, yep. 5, yep. They're always up there. But
That
yeah.
was
Alright,
that was me a few years ago, so I understand.
I know that guy.
Alright.
Yeah.
yeah.
So then, question for you: of the big three, so Steele, Oliver, and McRae, which one of those will be the most owned? Which one will be the least owned?
Yeah, it's a better question.
Oh,
I
goodness. I think McRae
think
will
Jack
be the
Steele.
most-
I think Jack Steele.
And who'll be least owned?
Okay.
Oliver.
Yeah, Oliver always gets underrated somehow.
Oliver's a taggable one, so that's the only reason why.
He gets
He might
tagged
be
once
left
by one
out.
guy, and that's it. But I don't even think he's taggable anymore, to
Yeah.
be honest. But
Might
anyway,
not even get tagged. Yeah.
I think Jack Steele is probably the most recognisable, and yeah, now he's, premier gun of the comp. Maybe he'd be the one. But anyway, we'll probably have them all.
It's just going to be painful in the first round. Whichever one you don't pick, you're just going to be sit there like, yep, I'm not getting him. But
He's going 150. Shit.
Here we go. Good content for us when we cry about it, but nonetheless, hopefully it goes well. But anyway, that's our first podcast or TV show, as I wanted to call it, but you guys wanted to call it podcast.
No.
But anyway.
God. I
This
said
is
just
a
call
TV
it
show.
Fantasy Take TV. I just said the TV. It's not a show.
Fantasy Take TV show.
You guys
That's
should have seen
not
this
what the
guy
logo
trying to come
says.
up with a name for this thing for about a month.
No,
I think he gave himself insomnia
do
in
we
the
have?
process.
Anyway.
Yeah.
shouldn't go
Anyway, thanks for joining us. Obviously, first a little bit rusty on the intro, I think I was, but yeah, very excited for this year. Lots more content to come. I think you boys are going away for a bit shortly, and then in the new year, we
hopefully.
full steam ahead. Hopefully, we'll see how we go. So Anna, pleasure as always.
Pleasure's mine, mate.
JD, thanks for coming again.
George, thanks for having me again.
Shouldn't say it makes it sound like I'm the owner. It's all three of us. I got to rephrase that. Doesn't matter. It's
Where's the
time.
logo?
Yeah,
It's in my
that's
box.
it. That's the one.
I always do that.
Yeah.
So we'll be on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple, whatever, everything. And then we'll fire up the Facebook page as well and the Twitter page as well, which Enno's doing a fantastic job on. So great work there.
Yeah, I'm just
Anyway.
a social media manager, mate. That's it. Not a super coach player.
And what about the old Discord, right? That's where you'll find us the most.
I guess
Yes.
so.
If you Discord's your thing. Live chat in games when that happens, or just want to post your team and stuff like that. Come say hello in Discord. Great fun there. If you want the community experience, speak with others about Supercoach, come to the Discord. So lots of fun there. So anyway,
It gets heated. It gets heated, especially in the preseason. People live or die by their pick, so you better come prepared to have some spirited discussions.
Yeah, people take it personally. I get DMs like gets pretty bad. It's like suck it up. It's not that bad. Anyway, we'll end it on that note. But yeah, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys next time.